Ready? So tonight's demonstrator is Merryll Saylan. And Merrill, I have a quiz for you.
Yeah.
Do you remember when the last time was that you demoed for our club?
Well, I was just talking, I forgot your first name.
Henry?
Yes, about that, and it was 2010.
It was October of 2010 was the last time Merrill was out. And that's when you lived in California, right?
Right.
California. So Merrill's demo tonight is it's called multiples, turning a set of small bowls. The description she gave is using a screw chuck for mounting and for reverse chucking. Simple and easy techniques. And she's going to do some coloring and show us how to finish. Is that correct?
I don't know that I'll show you how to
Finish.
but we will talk about
it.
And I brought some milk paint.
Brought
to
some milk paint.
demonstrate, yeah.
And all right, awesome. So I had a little write-up in the newsletter. Did you guys all read that write-up on Merrill?
I read that right.
That was pretty good, wasn't it? That was all me. So Merrill is an artist. If she isn't working with wood, she would be drawing, painting, bookmaking, or cooking. All of these take practice, dedication, working with your hands, and creativity. Merrill's been a professional wood turner for over 40 years. I think it's probably like 44 years now. Is that about right?
Maybe.
40 years. Been a member of AAW for 33 years. When she first started turning, her approach to turning was different from that of many peers. Her interest in rules was minimal, and her bold explorations, including combining materials and the use of surface texturing and color, is what set her apart. Her work is documented in the Smithsonian Archives of American Art. Her artwork is held in the collections of many major museums, and it's also on display at the U.S. Embassy in Fiji, where she taught a class as part of an international art program.
Well, it's back now.
It's back now. Nice. In 2009, Merrill was selected as the AAW's Professional Outreach Program Merit Award honoree in recognition of her contributions as an artist, teacher, and leader in the field of wood turning. And that's my intro, and so it gives me great pleasure to turn the mic over to Merryll Saylan.
Thank you. So I was going to talk a little bit about that artist part, because when I started turning, I was in an art program. I was in a woodworking program. And then somebody suggested I go to a turning conference, which was Dale Nish's. And when I started, we used scrapers. We didn't have nobody had gouges. And I went to this turning conference, and they started asking me whether I cut or what, and I didn't know what they were talking about. And so I avoided the turners for quite a long time. And I never would take classes because they were intimidating. And the truth is, I'm not much of a demonstrator. I don't demonstrate that often. So whenever I have been in a situation like this, I always say, I went to art school. Therefore, and the other one now is that, I teach, and I like teaching. I've taught up at Anderson Ranch quite a lot and at Arrowmont, and that's a whole different kind of thing than demonstrating. Like somebody asked me what degree my gouge is, and I have no clue. So I give this disclaimer before I start. The other one is, after a couple of surgeries and a move, I realized when I was prepping for this, oh my God, I'm rusty. So now that you know all that, you'll be more forgiving. So the other thing when I started, do you know Jerry Glazer? Have you heard his name? Well, I went to school in Southern California, and he was friends with the woodshop teachers where I was going to grad school. I took woodworking just as between graduating college and thinking I was going to go to architecture school. And I never left the wood program. So Jerry came and visited us, and he demonstrated with his scrapers, and he sold us students. We bought a bunch of tools from him. Not tools, but just steel. And I used to know the name of it, but I don't know what it is. And Jerry knew, he could tell me, even years later, what steel it was he sold us. But because we didn't know what we were doing, and this piece of bar was expensive, we came up with this technique this is before all these fancy tools. We routed out a square, 2 pieces of wood, glued them together, put our tool in there, and made a tool at each end so that we got our money's worth. And the other one that's always struck me as strange is if you needed a shape, you didn't go buy a tool with a shape. You had a bar, you went to the grinder, and you made your shape. And I always find it funny when people have signature tools, because isn't that just going to your grinder? So I'll pass these around so you can see what Jerry taught us.
So how old are those tools that you're passing around?
Well, I was in grad school, so 73, how many years ago? 74? So how old is that?
45?
Yeah, there you go. The other one, like,
That's my point.
what?
They're still in good shape.
They're still in good shape. I mean, once I went to gouges, which was probably 10 or 12 years later, then I didn't use them as much. But this paper-thin bowl was scraped. It was not done with a gouge. One time in the 80s, I was teaching at Aeromont, and I had this nuclear physicist for a student, and he found out I scraped, and he said, "That's cheating." So that was always a mark against me. I mean, now it's really fun. That's another funny thing, how things turn around. Now that they have all these carbide tools, like we had carbide tools there, but they threw them away, basically. You know, who wants to sharpen a carbide turning tool? But now they have all these fancy tips, but that's scraping. So why is it different? That's what I want to know. So the other thing that Jerry did way back then, and I'll pass this around, was he had these screws, and there wasn't the chuck. This was before the chuck. And he brought you this, I bought these screws off him. I have 2 of them. And they are the best ever. And then I taught a design class one time, and I had a student who sold medical equipment. You got it? I'll pass it out. Just don't lose it. So what I did with Jerry's screw is I mounted a plywood block to a faceplate and got my center. And then now I can't understand how I did it, but you ran this pin from the side, so it locked it in so it wouldn't spin in the faceplate. And at some point I had to take it apart because I moved to England and I couldn't use any of my equipment, but I wanted my screw. But this student, if any of you know orthopedic surgeons, this guy brought this equipment to our class to show us what he sold. And the screws that they sold, like for ankle, to put your ankle together if you broke it, had these threads. So I think Jerry, he was a machinist, he got hold of these things. But when you see how these teeth are, they're so sharp that they hold anything and everything. So at some point I invested and bought one of Jerry's whole chuck thing here. And I don't know if anybody, if they still make these. Somebody said they do. Robust? Is Glazer still in business? Really? Who's running it? Oh, I don't know. I know that Stuart Batty was trying to run it for a while. But no, I guess not. Anyway, so my approach has always been, well, like my tools that I have, they're not the best. My handles, I never was interested in beautiful handles. It's a means to an end. If they work, they work. So what I thought I'd do is just show you how I use the chuck. So I'll start a bowl on here. And I don't want to have to stick that whole thing in, so I'm hoping I have my spacers here. I'll use a spacer so that I don't have to screw in as far. So like for a little piece like this, because those teeth really bite down, I'll use a spacer, and only that little bit is sticking out. Can you see? That's like, it's a little, maybe what, 5/16?
Isn't that chuck designed to where you can screw that one piece out?
Yeah. Yeah, you can, yeah, that's the other thing nice, is I can reverse and have a smaller part if you're turning something smaller. So I use this, I have a setup at home where I have 2 lathes. And I have, regular lathe like this. I have a one-way, and I have this on there. And then I have a short bed English lathe. So I can go back and forth, and I do this for reverse chucking and go to my other lathe with this chuck, turn the inside, go back to here. I always feel like it's very decadent to have two machines and that I don't have to move my chucks on and off. I understand the new Nova chucks have a good threaded screw, but my one-way chuck, which I use for large platters, I hate that screw. I've just never been able to get it to work. I don't know if any of you have one of those or not. So let's see. The other way that I work differently, and I'll pass this around, is I draw. And maybe it's because my brain can't think of what I'm doing. So that's what I didn't bring. So I do, can you see this? And then I'll pass this thing around. So I've done towers of bowls, like over 6 feet tall, with 15, 20 bowls in it. And I give myself a problem. And so the opening on all of those are 4 inches by 4 inches. I did a lot of Japanese tea sets. Not that you can drink tea in them, but so that becomes my parameter. The other thing is that I work with dry wood. So if I know that I have this 4-inch opening and I want to fit my bowl in there, then I draw it up. And I do this even for platters. I think I have some. For me, not that you can see these, they're so pale. But I draw so that I know how I'm going to mount it. Partly because I have dry wood. I might have 2-inch thick stock for a big platter. So I want to know where my faceplate screws are going to go. I want to know how much room I have, what the chuck's going to hold. So I plan almost everything out. I might change it. It's not going to be exact, but it gives me a starting place to work from. And then from there, every bowl will be different. But there's just this 4-inch by 4-inch. It has to fit. And one time I did a piece, which of course I'm always late, and I rushed over to the photographer. This was a tower, so there were 15 bowls. And one of the bowls, might even have, this is from that. Anyway, I made little polka dots in acrylic on the rim, and the damn thing didn't fit at the photographer. Those little dumb things sticking out wouldn't allow this bowl to slide in. So he waited for me. I had to go back and turn another one and make it smaller. So I could still, I wanted those polka dots. So that's a different way of working. And I must admit, when I teach, I make people do some sketching. For me, it's a lot easier to change a shape or see if a curve is going to work on a piece of paper than on wood. But if you're getting all this green wood and you don't care, you can throw it away. But I never had that. I had dry wood. Yeah.
So your sketches are always full size rather than a half profile?
I can't picture half profiles. I know Reiki. Well, but the thing that you do, a friend of mine who taught drawing, is by just drawing squigglies. Like, I don't know if I have that picture here. Here, I can show you though. I find I want to, they're not exact, but it gives me an idea, is that I'm going to want to see the whole thing. Like, how can you draw a half profile? So I just start drawing, like you could just draw squigglies. Then I can come in, I sort of have those squiggles. Is that going to show? And I can start shaping. Like, here's the edge of those squiggles. Gives me something round. It gives me an idea that I have a 3-dimensional piece. I mean, I'm incapable of drawing a half silhouette. I don't know, is that what you do? For me, it's a way of playing. So I can start changing shapes, like, let's say I do more squiggles. But I want a straight edge. It's funny, I'm taking in Louisville, they have a really strong art association. And if you join, it's like $35 for the year. I can do drop-in drawing weekly. They have painting, they have critiques on another day. And you just drop in, there's no fee for it. It's just part of your membership. And people do come from Boulder and other places just by joining the association. So I've been going to the Tuesday morning drawing, and I can draw bowls and bottles, but give me a landscape, oh my gosh, it's horrible. But I can squiggle, you know, I can do that. So I actually we were drawing animals recently, and I actually had a cat that looked like a cat. You know? I guess if you keep going, it's like turning, keep doing it. I have a couple of friends. One of my friends was a professional turner in San Francisco who did all the restoration work in the city. I mean, tons of it, like all the rebuilds of these Victorians. And she used to talk about, you know, you take a vacation and you lose your muscle memory. and that you really have to keep practicing. And I don't know, as I've gotten older, that's something I don't do as much. Anyway, so what I'm going to do is show you how I rough out a bowl, and then show you how I then reverse it. So one thing, I don't know the new chucks. So when I started, there were no chucks. And only person I knew who had a chuck was Bob Stockstill. And the ones you could buy at the time if you wanted the four-jaw were the ones separately. You had to put them together separately. And he was so proud that he had one that actually where all of four moved. But no one else had that. Then they came out with some chucks. So when I used to turn for reversing, I did 2 faceplates. And if I made a tenon, I made a little extra tenon, and it had to fit into a hole in the plywood. And it was one of those things, one day, every time you cut that little recess, it's perfect. The next day, you can't get it right. And then if you cut it and it's too big, you're out of luck, because then your bowl wobbles. Then they came up with these chucks, I remember. That was exciting. And that Craft Supplies England had them, and they were on a tension thing, but your bowl still had to fit. And then you'd tighten down, and then that spring action would hold your piece in. And then when I went to England, I got a residency in 1990, was where I got my first chuck, which was the Axminster. And I still have it, and I think it might be losing some, I might have to buy a new chuck. That's why I'm going to AAW this summer, is because I need the trade show. Do you guys know John Kelsey at all? So he used to be the first editor of Fine Woodworking, and then he does the teaching foundations for AAW now. He writes them. And I said to him, God, I noticed my stuff's gotten really old. And he said, I wonder how that happened. I met him in the 70s. Okay, so I pre-drilled these. I do use a bandsaw. Sometimes there's a group on Facebook for women in turning. See, it was sort of a stubborn streak of mine, which was, I'm never going to do hollow turning. Like, that looks so boring. You know, you have to keep shaking out the shavings, and who wants to stand there all day? 2, almost in principle, I have an art degree. I'm not doing tops or pins. I'm going right to the top right away. Now I'm thinking it might be kind of fun to learn how to turn a top. Yeah, but I find spindle turning's impossible. I just did some knobs for a friend. You would think after 40 years I could make 4 matching knobs. I sent her 10 of them, and she said she was able to find 4 that maybe worked. What is that noise? Oh, okay. Okay. That's later. So I am not brave. So I don't want to put something on that's going to bounce like crazy. I just see no joy in that whatsoever. And as I've gotten older, I don't have the strength either. So I've cut on my bandsaw. I have a gorgeous bandsaw. And I drill my holes, and I make my life as simple as possible. So one of the things I found with this, let's see. I made myself big wooden hand wheels. They make life much easier. And I wear friction gloves. So the guys, I started the Bay Area Club in 1989, I think, mainly for professionals that we could get together and have company. And then I went to England. When I came back, the club was huge like this. And it was just a different place. But so the guys from the club gave me a homemade vacuum chuck. And I watched them try to center things on the vacuum chuck. And I decided my way, low-tech that it is, I think I can do it as fast, especially when you're doing it all the time. So this hole from the tailstock is important because that'll line me up. Right now it helps hold it while I start, but it'll line up reverse chucking also. So I never get rid of that hole. I don't bother flattening this out. I know that sounds sacrilegious, but I don't. Oh. Is this locked? So for years I had these two crummy lathes. I bought an old lathe from somebody. That's what I was going to say. Part of starting is you start what you can afford. Then you buy up, buy up, and buy up. And so at some point, people like Michael Hoselek and Mark Spheri started teasing me that I was the only professional they knew who had these crappy lathes. And I had some machine, I just sold one of them, a Wallace, which was a company out of Chicago. I had a jointer that I think must have been over 70 years old. And I had one of their lathes that I bought from a guy in Hollywood who made furniture for the movie industry. And the headstock turned. It was a half horsepower motor. It had a flat belt. And I turned all my huge sculptures on that thing. And his floor stand, because when you turned the head, the floor stand he made had a flat steel plate, and then the bars came up, and then the tool rest went in it. So you stood on that, which gave it ballast, and then it didn't shake. And I did I don't know if you've ever seen pictures of my barbells, and they're like 4 feet, and the wheels are 25 inches, 5 inches thick. And I did a whole series with heavy plastic. But see, I didn't know any better. And you do whatever you have to. For the ones with plastic, they were so out of balance, I poured polyester resin that, I didn't, now they sell things. I bought cheap lead at the fishing store, and then I kept screwing it into a plywood back till it was somewhat balanced. And it worked. But then I got a one-way eventually. And what a difference. It does make a difference. But you can still do it. I had cataract surgery a few years ago, and the doctor called it the woodworker's lens. I have one for close-up and one mid-range. So basically, I can see better without these, but you've got to wear something to protect your eyes. But then I can't see out there. You're right. Okay, so pull on. Let's see how this is going to go. So I was going to, I drew a picture of what I wanted to turn, kind of, sort of. Huh? What do you mean? No, here, in here. I did it for this. Where is it? Darn, I'm sorry. So I wanted a slightly longer foot, so like an inch, and then a shallower bowl. So not that I've achieved that with some of the ones I rough turned. A lot of times if I'm turning something with a long foot and a bowl, I will glue things on because I can't always get deep enough wood. But because I don't want vibration with a bowl sticking out 6 inches on a foot, I'll leave that foot really thick, really heavy. So the drawing helps me later to go back and refine the shape. So I sort of work back and forth. It's like carving in the round. So let's see. This is tearing up beautifully. This is a Jerry Glazer tool that was given to me for a present. And then he made me a set when I was traveling to England where the handle, this unscrews, and I have three different tools for one handle. And I had him take the lead out because it was too heavy for traveling and too heavy for sharpening. That's not good to do. This is.
You want a shorter tool then?
Do you have one?
Yeah.
That would be great. Do you have a 4-inch or 3-inch? 4-inch would be good. Yeah, I'll do this one.
6 and 8.
Oh, that's nice. Oh, that's 6? Doesn't feel right. I think this is the first gouge I ever bought from Woodcraft Supplies. There's not much left of it anymore, but I still like it. I think I'll stop this for a minute. So at some point, I know that my chuck, the contraction kind, is 2.5 inches. So I'm going to right now I'm 3 here. So oh, this is high. What? So I have a tendency to go back and forth. Like if one tool doesn't feel right, then I'll just go get another one. The other thing that's interesting is I still hand grind, and I don't really, it's sort of a crapshoot in a way. Like I don't know the angles. That professional churner that I used to know, unfortunately, she used to sharpen her gouges, and they were deep gouges that she used to order from New Zealand because there weren't any in the old days in this country. You couldn't find them. I could never do that. She did on the top of the grinding wheel. She took off all the guards and just lay it down. I have a tendency, I don't know, I used to find teaching that the secret was a soft touch when you're grinding, and that a lot of people use up their tools really fast because they go to that grinder and they really jab it in. I don't know, what do you have here on here? Do you have the white stones?
Yeah, 80 and 120.
Yes, so I still use the white stone, and a blue stone. And Tom Worsing told me he felt sorry for me. Like, how many of you all have that new diamond? See, whatever it is, yes. Do you like it? Well, the other problem I have, so Tom was going to actually give me one, but I have a 7-inch grinder. I used to have a 3-phase Stanley. What's that? Oh, my old tool. And so when I didn't have three-phase on one of my moves, so I got rid of it. And I wanted another ball door grinder, but I didn't want to spend the money on an 8-inch, so I bought a 7-inch. And then I never realized what a problem it is finding wheels for it. But the ball door grinder is the best. There's absolutely no vibration or anything. So I'm hoping I'll try that. So what I'm going to do now is just measure, see where I am. So I'm about an inch, which is what I wanted. I don't have the shape, it's pretty rough. So I'll clean that up a little and then make my foot. I do not sand at this point because it may change. You know, if I decide I want to shape the foot, then I'm going to have to do the bottom again if I want to make a smaller foot, which is what I do want to do. I keep forgetting. So now I'm just trying to refine my lumpy shape. Let's see, where is it? So, I don't know, is Sears still around? Sort of. So actually it was, I think John Jordan years ago told me that Sears had these scrapers, or whatever they're called, and they were actually angled, two different angles for, just straight across. And they were $14, high-speed steel. And so you can use them for shear scraping. They just work perfectly. So I shaped the round edge, and I get my nice burr, and I can use it for cleanup. And it's $14. So I just wondered if those things still exist. Probably not. The other one is I have a lot of oddball tools like that. We bought 1/4-inch high-speed steel, ordered it somewhere, just bar stock. It's about maybe 8 inches long. And then I can you see the edge? Anyway, I'll pass this out. And so I can make, like, one of the things I like to do is make little lines, just mess up a surface with little rough lines, and then if you burn it and make it black, it's really quite a nice finish. And so I bought this, and I just made a really sharp point. You have to keep sharpening it. And I only use it for that one job. But when they're so inexpensive, um, so I bought a bunch of this bar stock, and I've made little half rounds. I've done all kinds of things, if I need a shape. So like another tool, I can't wait to show this to Tom Worsing. So the other thing he mentioned, he gave a talk, maybe he came to your club too, on tool steel. And he put down carbon steel, God. And I said, I have lots of carbon steel tools. Like, what's wrong with that? And he just Tom's into his tools. So when I first bought my first lathe, it came with a chest full of tools, some even homemade gouges. And this was a little tiny skew. And I found it made the absolute perfect foot for my dovetail chuck. And I use it for that one thing. And I don't know if that exists, but you used to be able to go to garage sales and find these things for $2 or $3. And they're really worth having, just so you can make one tool or one shape for something. But I use this all the time. So right now I'm going to try to clean that surface. I'm not sanding. And then we'll do one, I have another version, and then we'll do the bottoms. Okay.
Tom gives you a new CBN wheel. You're going to have to get all new tools also.
I guess you think so? Yeah, you can't.
You're not supposed to use carbon steel on CBN.
Oh, well, then I'll just stick to what I have.
Yeah. Or buy new tools at the AAW symposium.
Well, I am planning to spend some, when I did these handles for this friend, so on my one-way chuck, so I wanted to put a big, square stock in and turn little knobs on the end. And that I didn't have small enough jaws, because the only time I use my one-way are for big, big platters. And so I thought, I wonder, the teeth change over the years, how they go together. So I'm not sure a new set of jaws will fit my old chuck. That's the problem. Like for my Axminster, I have so many different jaws to them. I have ones that go down to 1 inch and bigger ones, so I don't want to spend the money. So I'm going to clean this up and then I'll cut the foot. So when I use this, or I have a half round also, then I'm running it on this edge. So if I'm not running it flat. So I'm just coming across like that. I mean, you can use a lot of different tools for that. And actually, I don't mind sanding, only if it's furniture. So when I was living in England, the Turners used to, maybe they do it here too now, this sort of, when I finish turning, I'm so good. I start with 180 grit or 220. And in those days, I was doing this texture with my angle grinder and 35 grit disc. So I would say, well, I start with 35 because they were so funny. They're so snobby. Okay, I have a lot of bad stuff here, but we're going to ignore it because move on. I want to move on. That's okay. Oh, it's still locked. So, my husband was a professional photographer, and when you work in a dark room, he had a professional lab in Hollywood. You have to put everything back in its place, and I'm notorious for not putting everything back in its place. So I was going to look for my little ruler that I put down somewhere. Here it is. Make sure. Yeah. So it's a little more than 2.5. So this little crummy tool, so because of its angle, when I run it to cut my dovetail, I make sure that the flat part is perpendicular to the bed of the lathe. And then because of doing that, it absolutely does that 10, 15 degree that it's supposed to, as long as I do that part. So that's sort of your, developing your eye. I don't bother, unless it's a piece that's so rough where it's going to interfere. But what's important when it goes in your chuck is this flat part here. That's the part that makes it seat really tightly in your chuck, and not this. This is inside, and it doesn't matter. So I don't waste time. That's another thing I've noticed. I don't know if it's the dryness here, but I have to wax my beds more often. It feels like it gets grittier. They don't rust, but they do. I felt like, and then I turned some mahogany the other day, and it was like powder sort of sticking to the lathe in a way that I don't remember happening. And I don't know if that's the dryness. I guess the good thing is that stuff won't warp. It still warps. So I was going to see, have you ever noticed, like people used to say, because I did dry wood, that it doesn't warp. This one looks okay. But when you're turning a dry bowl and you start getting thinner, you're going to have the straight grain and the end grain. You're going to see that your rim is slightly thicker and thinner as it goes around. That used to drive me crazy. And I would even go in later and turn the outside to correct that, because it moves no matter how dry the wood is. But I wonder in your air if maybe it wouldn't do that. Yeah, there's that too. I was turning a large platter once, and it was taking me forever, like 24 inches, and it was starting to warp, and we were supposed to go out, I think it was like New Year's Eve, and so my husband had to go out without me because I couldn't leave that piece. It feels. Now, do I have? Yeah, I'll pass this out. Somehow with this, I don't know, maybe the Nova works the same with the dovetail jaws, But I really don't need much of a foot to hold it. The problem becomes if you catch it, if you make a catch when you're turning the inside, then it's all over with. I mean, it might break off, that little tiny foot. It might just split. But that depends on the wood you're using too. A couple people I know have actually added some hot glue, but I only do that when I'm desperate. So you can see how small that is, and it works. So I either reverse this chuck, or I wanted to show you the next part, just so I can prove that it works. But you'll take my word for it. So the lock is, maybe I don't think I need the lock. What I need is this. That screw holds so tight sometimes that when I'm trying to unscrew the bowl, the whole chuck will come off. So that's just a start. Then I'll do another one after. Well, I don't know how my time is. 40 minutes? Okay. So I rough turned this bowl with the same kind of foot. And now I want to show you by this wonderful screw chuck here. I have a wardrobe of these. Oops. So I can turn all of this off. Quickly center. So I have just this little hole. This is I do a lot of these little pieces. What I do is save my corners from large platters, and then I can make little bowls, little plates out of it. So I have a lot. I gave away a bunch when I moved, but these are like scrap plywood, or I'll have leftover alder, poplar, whatever, and I make these little face plates, or I don't know what you'd call them, and they screw on here. Whoops, good thinking, Merrill. We're right there. So as long as I have this here, I don't know if this will fit, but I can go over here. I reuse them over and over again. So if it's a little wobbly, then I'll just turn off a little. And what I have found with these cones, if I turn them so that it's sort of coned, it's cupped, then I don't have to be exact for a reverse chuck. If it has a slight taper, can you see that? And then I can adjust that because the bowl is curved on the inside also. So that's why they have sometimes many cuts in them, because I do use them over and over again until there's nothing left, and then they get tossed. or go in the barbecue or something. So by having this here, then that holds it on. And by using this cone taper, then I can get in really close and finish that last nub by myself. So let's see if that's going to be round. That one's pretty good. So then I would just come in with a I have another, oh, here I can draw it here. I have another little, that little half-inch, like half-inch by a quarter-inch scraper. So like this. Here's the tool handle. And so what I did is cut on the grinder a little bit like that. So that shape, that's what's nice about having cheap tools, because if you mess up, you don't care. And with that, I can really get down, hollow out that inside, and then just hand finish the little nub with a, sometimes I now carve a lotus leaf flower in the bottom, and it looks pretty nice. I have a lot of things to make life easy. The other thing I have is, you know those drum sanders, the pneumatic air? So a bunch of us got together and made them for ourselves, and sometimes I'll sand the bottom off on that. I'm not proud. So I have this little crappy gouge, little inexpensive. I keep forgetting that I pull out. Let's see, I need a little more here. I need to get closer. I like to get really close in there, especially with those little tools. See how close I can get here. Sometimes the face shield, if it gets too dusty, I can't see. No, I'm not supposed to do that. So I'm just getting that nub as small as I can. So we'll do another one here. But you have to leave that hole, and that's your lineup. Does that make sense? I don't know, maybe you already do that, I don't know. But that's, I can, do all kinds of things. Just come in with a little hand chisel. Or actually, Betty Scarpino told me another trick one time is, those little sanding foam discs that you might sand with, put it in your drill press, and you can clean up that bottom right on your drill. I mean, all kinds of things. I think the concept is to make it easy. as easy as you want, unless you're into doing it more complicated. So let's see, one of these. So I don't know if this one fits. So I wanted to make a little longer foot and have it tapered. So this, I'm going to cut this one way down, and I'll do it the same way. I don't know if this fit. I have, you know, like a bin full under my workbench of these pieces. And so I'll find the closest one I can and then maybe adjust it. I'll do this and then just talk a little bit about how I choose materials and use finishes. Unless you want me to keep playing with this. It's up to you. Huh? Yeah, how's our time? We have a half hour. How much? 30 minutes. So sometimes I'll put this on and it's too loose. I can tell here there's a little wobble in here. But let's see what it looks like when I turn it on. Yeah, see, so it's not round. Can you see? It's so it feels like it's just not tight. So what I'm going to do is clean it up, and I think I have to run into make this one smaller here. That's why they get used up eventually. Now, I don't know, maybe with your vacuum chuck, you can do it fast. I just couldn't conquer the vacuum chuck. So they came and took it back. So this isn't round itself. Let me make sure it's on tight. Yep. So the whole thing's warped. There was a turner I knew who lived in Hawaii, and he was pretty famous. And he sent me, it turned out we both went to the same schools in LA, in college. And he sent me a video once of what he made and how he made it. And he's absolutely bare-chested, turning in Hawaii. And I thought, oh my God, just those chips. The thought was revolting. Now I have a feeling it's going to be too deep. Maybe not. This one has a hole running all the way through it, so I don't know what I used it for. Is it this one or this one? This one. Let's see. Is that a dance club?
Pole dancing club. We meet over there after the meeting.
Do you? My first time in college, I met these students from Venezuela or something, and they were into dancing. And who knew, but in the San Fernando Valley, there was a Latin dancing club, and the people went there, like a cocktail club, but all Latin dancing. Okay, let's see. I'm going to turn this down. It's still a little bit. Do I want to fiddle? No, we're just going to go for it. Oh, great. So it's definitely out of round. You don't want to do this. Turn it. No, it is out of round, but I'm going to do it anyway. I want to cut this foot down. So this is a chance where I really do the final shape on a piece. I can get down to a little teeny foot, or I can texture the foot, or I like a lot of bases that are beaded, but the bowl is smooth. So by leaving it so that it makes it easier and more solid to turn the bowl, then I'll come back and play with it. Then I do not do any painting unless I want to paint stripes on a piece while it's on here. So, and then I can, just go crazy with shapes. I guess that little piece is out. Just that little pointed one, but I don't need it because I think in terms of time. Oh, you got it? Whoops! So that slipped. They'll never go back again. So
that's what the point's for in the bottom of the bowl.
yeah, but this bolt is not fitting my jam chuck that well. Let's see. Yeah, see, it's already out of round because I didn't make it tight enough. But this is a really, if it's really sharp, and this is a personal thing. I hate things that are totally perfect. So like people who do lines and measure everyone out, I mean, if that's part of your design, that's one thing. But if I just want to make lines, I find it's better to just do it by eye, to have a feeling for it. I think it looks more natural. There's that Japanese, what do they call it, wabi-sabi? Or the American Indians. Like I took jewelry in college, and one of the things they taught you was, what did the American Indians say? God doesn't make everything perfect. So even if they made a perfect silver bracelet, they might do one thing to it to make it not perfect, because that's much more natural. None of us are perfect. So I just eyeball it. Of course, I can't get quite in that little part there. So the truth is I go for simplicity and ease. That's my motto in life. And then just to have fun. So, so this, if you painted it or colored it, then it actually, see, it looks a lot. Here? Oh, up here. We can, actually that looks better than I thought it would. It's funny. Yeah, can you see the lines? So, one of the things, I used to teach a design class in the Bay Area, and I thought about, wonder if we could do something like that here. But one of the things I made the students do, we went to the Asian Art Museum to just look at Japanese and Chinese pots. And one of the guys I remember in my class said, "They're copying me," you know, because you know, it's all been done before. So this piece, you know, would certainly clean up and sand, and I would hollow this out. I would do a little more work. This, I did a bunch of salad bowls that taper down kind of like this, but smaller. And then a friend bought, I had a big, you know, open studio. And he said, when you put salad in, though, they fell over. So that's not a good function. So one of the things people are always asking, I can go through and explain some of these finishes. So I choose, how's our time, okay? Yeah. Okay, so I choose wood partially for what I'm looking for in terms of finish. So these I did actually for the old the Woodturning magazine. I did early on in the 90s a whole series of articles on color and finishing for them. So these are 3 different woods: a mahogany, a bird's eye maple here, and oak. And it's the exact same dye. And I think this is important, not so much to learn, but to just have in your mind if you're adding color to a piece, because that's the same dye on 3 different woods, because the wood is colored. The wood, like I bleached the first time because I went into a dye shop that had fabric dye. I started with fabric dyes. And I said, I need white. These colors are really muddy. And they looked at me like I was crazy because there's no white dye. because they start with white fabric, white paper. And then I thought, well, what if I bleach my wood and then add color? Then I get much better color. You know, it really is what you're after. So if you think this blue on the maple, the bottom row is without any finish on it. The next is with oil, which yellows it. And then I used, I think, a spray deft lacquer. So each one of these, I mean, it's just remarkable to just know. So, I used to do a bunch of little plates called pastils, and they were based on pastel colors, little tiny plates. So then I bleached wood, and if you ever seen big quilted maple bleached, it's gorgeous just by itself. So that's worth knowing. Then, if I want to do something that has a texture or a color, you know, a little rougher, then if I use a wood that has these big pores, like this is ash and oak, this might be ash also. I love ash. But if I burn this, then the softwood will burn out more, and I can create texture. So I wouldn't burn maple myself. Like, why would you burn maple? It's such a dense, beautiful wood, and it's not going to react to the burning. So this is a piece of maple. It's Western maple, and I added fabric dye to it. Fabric dye, it's a fiber reactive. There's all different kinds of dyes. So Procyon, and then so I don't know much about the new acid dyes, but people say they're really good for wood too. But I have a friend who makes clothing and used to dye her own fabric, and she said, well, wood is cellulose fiber. This dye is designed for cellulose fiber. So one time Bob Stockstill was at a local club meeting. I said to him, Bob, guess what kind of wood this is? And he couldn't because I said I dyed it, and then he went, he hated that. But I thought it was kind of nice. And then when I was living in England, I didn't realize the pipe makers, like Briar pipes, all of those are dyed. They add dye to all of them. So I'll choose material. And not everybody's into that. That's my thing. I want the sort of wood and the finish I give it to work together. So this one is this paint called, I've seen it at Geary's here, Modern Options. It's an acrylic paint. And they have, I think, several different kinds. This is called Instant Iron. So it has so much iron filings in the paint that then you can rust it. And you can add a patina to it. And I did quite a lot of rust pieces, to the point where one time at a show somebody told me I should put it in a metal show and see what would happen because it was completely rusted. This is a just simple Watco oil finish, and it's a California Claro walnut. It used to be so easy to get Claro in California. I still have lots of chunks of it that I moved. Crazy. And then, so these are like cutoffs. Like I do large platters. I think the largest I've done was a 56-inch one, but mostly they're range around 30 inches. And so when you cut, like let's say you have 3-inch stock and you cut your circle, those corners are big enough for a teacup. And I moved those too. I moved those boxes. Milk paint is a whole other thing that a lot of artists are using. I didn't bring that sample. But it has a texture. I don't know, it has this old quality. The colors are very soft. They're shaker kinds of colors. If you put it on mahogany, I don't know if you can see, you can here, I'll pass this out. Mahogany, I think walnut, any wood that has tannic acid, because the milk paint, I have a bag, that's right, someplace here. I brought some with us, and some pieces I've been playing with. Oh, and I have some postcards here. Just ignore, which you're welcome to. Just ignore the address. It's 2 houses ago. And I just didn't cover it up. But you're welcome if you want. So this bag says $8.95. They're now $14.95. And this is only a couple years old, maybe. So mahogany is a favorite wood for using with milk paint, because milk paint, I don't think it says here, but it's a mixture of dried milk, casein powder. And there are other milk paint on the market, and they all have different properties. This is probably the most favorite. But it does have problems also. I really had a love-hate with it all the time. And it has lime in it. And it's the lime that has a chemical reaction with woods with tannic acid. So it'll turn them red underneath. I think, I didn't rub this out enough. Let's see. These are fantastic to rub out milk paint. It's like a Scotch-Brite. I buy pads. And at Granger, I found, because I was doing so much work, you can buy a roll of it 4 inches wide. I mean, it wasn't cheap, but it lasts forever. So milk paint, because of that lime and the powder, I don't think we have time. I won't mix any up now. But it comes in these bags. They probably sell it here. Gary's might sell it. That's a fabulous store. It's called the Old-Fashioned Milk Paint. It's Amazon's expensive. I think it's $18.95. But the milk paint company now is charging $10 to ship it. So it's a, huh? Yeah, but they added into the price. Haven't you noticed that? No, but I find with Amazon you have to be, I use Amazon much more here than where I lived. Where I used to live, I had 3 art supply, like Blick, big art supply places less than a mile from my house. I had a lumber yard like 4 blocks away. I had, so I went and shopped. Here, I don't have that luxury, although there is McGuckins. And so I order much more. Anyway, you can vaguely see that the red comes through. So they actually have, there's 2 places I brought this. I will tint, golden acrylics is another wonderful tool. Plus, I have a sheet maybe we could put on the website. They both have fabulous websites with instructions, pictures, how to. I learned how on golden. I was doing a piece and the color was looking pretty awful. How to make a glaze and make it look like an old master, it said. So because I lived near the art supply store, I must have gone 3 times that afternoon to get a color to get to where I wanted to go. But I followed their instructions exactly online. They have good mixing instructions, and once I really read the instructions, because I was having problems, and I think Mark Fury said, you know, you have to mix it for 3 minutes and let it sit at least 10 minutes. So once I learned that, the genius at Milk Paint is Kimberly Winkle. I don't know if you've ever had her here. Her stuff, mine's much rougher. Hers are like perfect. And I've written to her, like, how do you do that? So I have one, I don't know if this is from the Rocky Mountain Wood Symposium. I know that they published online my big full handout of color and, you know, working safely. This one is just basic, where I talk about wood bleaching, ebonizing. So if, who's you? And then, like, you could just put it on the website.
Do you have that in soft copy?
I have, yeah, this is for you.
Electronic?
Oh, I have it. You want me to email it to you?
Yeah.
I hope so.
Okay.
I mean, haven't you? Otherwise, I can scan it.
Okay.
I have a new computer, and the other day, trying to clean up emails, it erased 1.5 years of stuff. So I have an appointment with the Geek Squad. Anyway, so, but their instructions really are very good that come with this, and part of it is experimenting. And the other thing, I mean, I don't know if you ever, I've done that like with my Bay Area Club. We did all-day workshop. What would you like? Where we set up tables. And the women's group next Saturday, on the 18th, we're doing finishing and texturing. And it was going to be that everyone turned spheres. Did you teach that? And then they were going to go originally to AAW, but AAW is not doing that this year, but it's going to SWAT. So we're going to do a whole day of finishing and coloring, which I don't know if any guys come. If there's openings. Yeah, I don't know. It's a small group. But, you know, we could do more of that at some point if people are interested. Were you going to say something, or are you just stretching? Yeah. So, like, this piece is a mixture of carving with, like a die grinder, burrs, and then doing the black. And one of the things I learned from a painter friend is I just don't put just black, it's layers. So I'll burn, then I add dye, and then I tint the oil. So you get much richer color by layering colors. And I only learned that by going to painting class or from artist friends. And so it adds much more depth to the piece. And then this is milk paint in the middle. Anybody questions about any of that? Because there's so much to know.
Is this black milk paint, and then you did something and put on the blue, or then you put blue and rubbed off the surface? Isn't that what you did with that?
I'm trying to remember. Huh? Well, sometimes, like, I do bowls, and I will paint, like, the inside black, and I use black gesso for that, and then I can use milk paint over it. This one I can't remember. Maybe I dyed the whole thing and then added milk paint. Milk paint, if you use it over it goes on raw wood absolutely perfectly. You don't need to do anything. But if you put it on something that's previously been painted or finished, you have to add like an acrylic. They have something called super bond, but I think, I'm always a skeptic. I think it must be acrylic medium. And so I had a German student work and live with me for a month, and she found that you can buy non-pigmented milk paint. Because she didn't want those soft shaker colors. She wanted fuchsia and turquoise. And so you can tint this with acrylic. And then it has that bonding effect if you're putting it on a surface. It's really complicated. I mean, it's easy and complicated all at the same time. But, you know, it's like in old houses, how the windowsills, if they've been sanded, they have that quality, that feeling. There's something.
Lead-based paint.
Yeah, the lead-based paint. Yeah, wasn't that nice? I used to paint my front door almost every year with lead-based paint. You could get it as smooth as if you sprayed it.
Now, shelf life
Okay.
of mixed milk paint
Is
very short, correct?
very short. They say you can refrigerate it overnight, so you only mix what you need. But in here, and I repackage them into, because it's much easier to measure out of here. So I save, what's the ice cream? The gelato ice cream? They're perfect little jars for pouring this into. Yeah.
What ratio do you use? 1 to 1?
It's 1-to-1.
Oh, okay.
But I'm wondering here because it's a powder and it absorbs that water and it can get thicker. So then you just add more water. So unless there's questions, I think we're probably out of time, right?
Thank you.
Yeah.